And then, of course, improve the quality of hides and skins. Let's go to the other value chain. Pyrethrum. My governor, Her Excellency Susan, is here, and you'll be interested in these numbers. We used to supply 90% of pyrethrum globally. Today, we are merely at 2%. But when we have started this conversation, these numbers have started stacking up. Because now from 819 million, that is 77.4% growth year on year between 2021 and 2022. So putting the efforts together, that 77% can grow even to triple. Look at the other number, 6 growth, 100% growth in export value from 51 million to 360. This value chain, we used to do this 40 years ago. We used to do this 30 years ago. Why can't we do it now? Let's go to the next slide. So what does it, what is the aspiration? What is the art of the possible? We can build this from today, 900 tons MT to 10,000. But look at the numbers, how we are going to move the numbers. Billions to the farmers. Look at the number of households that we can impact. The revenue in billions in terms of export. Looking at that growth of sixfold and driving it. And this is not a no-brainer. We can do it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what do we need to do? Just giving farmers access to the seedlings. Let's just give farmers access to the seedlings. Today, even if I wanted to help where I went to school in Timboroa, slopes of Timboroa, there are no seedlings. So we need just like what Your Excellency have done with BT cotton, we need to do the same on pyrethrum. Let's go to the next one. Farmer. And farmer is very, very interesting. As you can see, that is only our local market in billions, 273, that is what's addressable market. 70% of the drugs that you consume here are imported. 60% of those drugs are generic drugs, meaning we can make them right here in Kenyan soil. We need to go and knock doors of the people who make those drugs, encourage the people who are making those drugs here today to make more of this. We have not even touched Africa. We have unique tropical diseases within this side of global south, and perhaps this could be the hub of that innovation. Let's go to the next slide. So what is possible? If we only touch 5% of African market, which is 1.8 trillion, let's call the total market. If you only look at that as addressable market is only 5%, which is very low ambition, we can go to 88 billion. These numbers are possible, and these numbers, we have cracked them with the sector and saying, if you're granted what you want, what would you do? Let's go to the second value chain. So what do we need to do? We need to give incentives to the local manufacturers of pharma. Because today we are competing with a global, because these are big and heavy investment. They cannot be able to compete with the global manufacturers. Either we bring the global manufacturers here, but as we do that, we give incentives. Let's go to the next value chain. Edible oils. You've been very vocal about this, Your Excellency. The import of what you call CPO, crude palm oil, is $1 billion US every year. That's what we have, 102, perhaps even more than that. We have these companies, 13 local processing companies, fairly doing very well, 100,000 jobs in the value chain, including packaging and all that. This is one of, when you do backward integration, is what you can stop reducing or start reducing the import bill on this value chain. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what do we need to do? Is it possible to start moving palm oil to other oil or to other oil seeds? Is it possible planting our own palm oil? Studies have been done. The Lower Tana and the whole of Western Belt and Lake Basin, we can be able to do edible, palm oil or palm. Across the fence on the side of Uganda, they have done about 60,000 acres done by Kenyan investors. So we met with Her Excellency Gladys Wang and say, give us 100,000 acres. And we start thinking about how to do that. And our members are ready to do that. This is possible. But we cannot, again, expect the same companies to buy the land. We need to think about how do we facilitate them to get that land. Let's go to the next one. So I've already talked about the solutions, and these are just some of them, but there's a huge potential here. Okay? Let's go to the next one. Housing, I don't think, Your Excellency, we need to talk about this housing because you know more than us about this one. Yeah, and I can see P.S. Hinga is here. So this one, we are going to fly over it. I think what we are seeing, the picture is even smaller than your picture that you have. So allow me, Your Excellency, not to talk about housing because I know P.S. Hinga, I could be in the panel that will talk about that. Let's go to the last one. I think the last one is automotive. And this is an interesting value chain. In 2008, former President Mwai Kibaki, God rest his soul, his government just tweaked one item in the policy. Remove the import duty of 250 cc's and below, and just because of that one line, the explosion that we see of motorcycles and the amount of jobs that motorcycles have created. Motorcycles today, there are 3 million boda-bodas operating in Kenya today. But we can go further than that. What if we now decide we are going to assemble those motorcycles here? What if we do and say we are going to CKD, complete knockdown kits here? Again, you have proliferation of manufacturing, small-scale manufacturing facilities across the country because motorcycles are across the country. This, Your Excellency, also is something that can be done. There are people, we've already started manufacturing here, wire harnessing, which is now being done here. There are parts that we are going to do, and also for the new vehicles. If you go to AVA in Mombasa, they are doing complete knockdown kit of Hilux trucks. They've started doing the ones for even Marco Polo bus, which is a luxury bus. So there's a lot that we can do on this value chain. Okay, next. And I think this, we don't even need to overthink about this. It has been done. We just need to replicate what has been done elsewhere. And I think, Your Excellency, this was the last value chain. And mine was just to show the numbers. We have detailed work that we have done on this. This presentation is on behalf of all the private sectors. We have collaborated with the MITI, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. They are fully involved in this. We want to thank you. And just to leave everyone with one thought. We always think big. We always talk big. As we think big, let us, Your Excellency, start small, but start now. It is possible and we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. Your Excellency, you've had the details of only those 7. Since we're celebrating 60 years since we had our independence, only about 7 value chains have grown this economy. In agriculture alone, we can have about 30 more. Then bring IT, and we'll have much more. Then bring automotive, as has been said. But I want us to have this conversation. So, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Dr. William Ruto, allow me to invite you into this panel, to join us in this panel. And allow me to invite the Chair of COG, Her Excellency Anne Waiguru, and our moderator for today, Eric Latif, who will join us and ask a few questions. And as we brief to Your Excellency, the way we want to conduct this panel today, apart from Eric Latif, who will ask us some hard questions, some of the responses we will give between ourselves with the COG is from our members here. So I know the Chair of COG will be calling some of the governors to respond, And I'll also be calling some of the industry leaders in those value chains to give some interventions as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, President, thank you for joining us this afternoon and for also having this conversation with the private sector. We also acknowledge the governors. Thank you very much for joining us as well. As we begin this, Your Excellency, the 7 value chains that we've talked about this afternoon, value chains that you've identified, value chains that you've had a conversation with governors about, and also with the private sector. I just want to ask you to set the scene in how these 7 value chains can transform this country's economy with the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. What is it that these value chains can do, and how can they transform?
Thank you very much, Latif. Madam Chair of the Council of Governors, my sister Caro, ministers present, governors present, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. We structured, when we went out to the people of Kenya to ask them how they would want their government to attend to the issues that are of priority and important to them, a couple of issues stood out. Many people talked about jobs. People wanted an opportunity to work. Many people in every part of Kenya say there must be a plan on how to engage the millions of young people. Many people wanted agriculture to pay. Many people spoke about the agricultural produce. Whether it was leather, I remember in Kajiado, a lady who spoke in Kajiado said, we are burying our hides, we are burying our skins. In many parts of Kenya, that was the practice. I remember I was in Mandera, same thing. Many people, for example, when you were in Nakuru, you remember Susan, many people talked about pyrethrum. They said, we used to make money from pyrethrum. We went to school with using money we parents get from pyrethrum. What happened? And many of the value chains, whether it is cotton, we went to Elgeyo Marakwet, people were asking us, what happened to cotton? We have a ginnery somewhere, I think it was down in Baringo down, where they said the ginnery has died or something. We went to Kitui, and it was the same story. So the value chains is part. These value chains are part of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda because it came from the people, number one. Number two, we decided intentionally to arrange the budget in line with what we consider to be the deliverables that will respond to what the people of Kenya wanted. If you look at our budget, we have deployed in these, I think 8 value chains, we have deployed 260 billion Kenya shillings, right from production through aggregation, through value addition, through processing and manufacturing, all the way to export. Because for a very long time, it was disjointed. We didn't look at organizing resources using a value chain approach, so that if you invest in production, you must also think about, okay, what happens when production is successful? You must plan for the next thing. Then if the production is good, you must think about storage. You must think about aggregation. When you have aggregated, what is the next step? How do you reduce post-harvest losses that account for 40% of all our agricultural produce losses? We need aggregation, we need value addition, we need cold rooms, we need processing, and we need to access the market. We need to take it to the next level. So that is the essence, as you asked me, that is the essence of how the value chains are related to the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. And we have had many meetings on all the value chains. We have had a conversation, for example, about housing. You know, housing is not a new program. We started this housing agenda in 2018. And unfortunately, we didn't get the results we were looking for because we were unable to make some difficult decisions, which we intend to make this time round. And I hope that we can do this together with the private sector. That's why this meeting is very important. This meeting is important because we have the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. We have KEPSA in our midst. We have Kenya National Chamber of Commerce in our meeting. These three organizations have already opposed my plan on housing. And I'm asking myself, good people, yeah? The interventions we are making is so that we can promote manufacturing. How can the Kenya Association of Manufacturers be opposing manufacturing? It doesn't make sense to me, good people, yeah? So that's why we need to have a candid conversation, because there is nothing new we are discussing. Nothing new. Everything we are discussing today, we have been discussing for the last 15, 20 years. The thing we have not been able to do is to make the decisions to move us forward. And you see, I am very amazed. I received the Prime Minister of Singapore. The great place we keep talking about. Oh, you know, Singapore, they were with us. You know, they were we were all in 1960. We were the same level. Today, Singapore is in the first world. Singapore was a slum like Kibera. All of you know that. You've seen the pictures. Singapore was like Kibera. But they made some difficult decisions. And that is why they are where they are, and we are where we are. It is as simple as that. Between us and Singapore, the gap is the ability to make decisions. So how can we be celebrating Singapore? You know, they've managed to overcome the housing challenge. 85% of the people of Singapore today own a home. Less than 5% in Kenya own a home. Right? So we are celebrating Singapore because they made a decision on housing. We don't want to make the decision in housing, and yet we want to become like Singapore. How is that going to happen? Not even by miracles, my friends. So I would really want to listen to us, you know, because, I hope I'm not being a bully. I'm just, maybe I should just say this slowly. I really want us as governments, the county governments have stepped forward, and I must congratulate the county governments. Out of 47 county governments, I think 42, 43 have already identified land for housing. Is it true, Hinga? Let us clap for our counties. They have stepped forward, you know? We have cracked the numbers. We've gone back, we've gone forth, we've done everything that we could. I was in Homa Bay. Gladys is there. I was with her, you know? At least the housing program in Homa Bay, I think, is now on first floor or something. I was in different parts of Kenya. Now, good people, we have to be intentional. We have to be deliberate. We have to be practical for us to be able to move forward. Number two, let's go to leather. We have discussed leather many years. You know, today I was supposed to go to Kenanie. When I heard the story of Kenanie, I just cancelled because it is the same old story. Oh, you know, we are still doing this. Oh, you know, we are still... It's just a circus. We need to stop the circus. You know? We need to stop the circus and get on with what we must do because the numbers are here. You know, our whole leather industry, despite us producing 3 million hides every year, 3 million skins every year, 18 million hides every year, we are still importing leather products, almost 10 billion every year. It is madness, isn't it? Right? And what is standing between us, and Rao will tell you, Rao is here, he's had this conversation with me many times. How do we face Rao and the leather industry that we are going to continue importing because we are unable to make some decisions? That whole exercise is standing between us. Today, we are generating maybe, I think, 17,000 jobs from the leather sector. We can generate 100,000 jobs with very minimal investment, just making the right decisions. Same thing, textile is the same story. I am very happy that there are many counties who have stepped forward, especially on the cotton value chain. And I have instructed Moses Kuria and team that we must get you the correct seeds for us to begin the journey to bring back cotton to where it is. We are now doing $500 million. It is a fraction of what we can do. And unfortunately, even with that $500 million, we are still importing almost 80% of the raw materials we are using to produce what we are selling to America. Just imagine how much money we would be making if we were using our own cotton. And we should be able to use our own cotton, good people. And it doesn't need rocket science. We just need to make the right decision. That's why we are putting money in cotton in our budget. In production, we are looking at ginning. We are looking at the whole value chain until we have the product that is good enough for our export processing zones and special economic zones. Same thing in edible oils. I had a conversation with the governor of Busia. And I'm very happy with what the governor of Busia is doing because he has managed to mobilize the community to think about edible oil. We have a whole 100 billion Kenya shillings we are spending every year to import edible oil, which we can produce in Kenya. We've talked this over and over and over again. I sent this Moses Kuria to go to Indonesia so that he can go and I am happy the president of Indonesia will be coming here next month so that we can sign the necessary instruments for us to do, if not as good as Indonesia, maybe better. Let us go to Bairethram. I have called you, Susan. Si nimekupigia simu? Nimepigia ule gavana wa Elgeyo Marakwet, Wesley, if he was here. Nimepigia gavana wa Uasin Gishu. I have tried to connect them with what is that company called? Kentegra and all the other people who want to buy because of people now realizing that synthetic pyrethrin is not the direction to go. Everybody is coming back to what we produce natural. We need to position ourselves as a country. I have had many meetings with the ambassador of America. They have stepped forward to say they will provide a market. You saw the numbers, the billions that will go to our farmers, the billions that will go to our processors. But we need to stop the talking. We just need to stop the talking, and we need to get on and do what we must do, you know? This good English we keep talking here, numbers, but when decision time comes, we can't make the right decision. We do this, I don't know what I was supposed to say, but anyway, my friend, I am so passionate about this thing. I am impatient with ourselves. We cannot continue to do this. We need to move the country forward, and let us have a candid discussion.
It's time for moving the talk from talk to action. And thank you very much. Just like C.S. Moses Kuria said in his opening remarks, the conversations have happened between the national government, the county governments. You've had agreements on this. Today is an opportunity for the private sector then to come on board and to present what they feel ought to happen as facilitation for them to be able to participate very well in this. Let me come to you, Governor Anne Waiguru, as chair of the Council of Governors. The conversations that you've had held at the summit with the president, and then also, of course, in the council itself, and discussions that need to happen. What is it that counties are doing and have done so far in these 7 value chains to get the ball rolling, so that we move from the way the president is saying, we move from talk to action? What are counties doing to act on this?
Thank you, Eric, Your Excellency, and the private sector colleagues, governors, all protocols observed. Good afternoon. Counties have been in this conversation since this government came to power. And not only have we been in the conversation, we've also been working backwards to ensure that whatever it is that is in the policies and in the manifesto, especially of the government, and specifically to do with manufacturing and agriculture and trade, that we are ensuring that we are aligning our county integrated development plans to the BITA program of the national government, because that's the easiest way to get funding for the things that we require. Now, what most of us have heard is about the CAIPs. You have heard that we have the county aggregation and industrial parks, where we are partnering with the Ministry of Trade to set up industries, both at the small scale and medium and large scale at the county level. What you don't know is that this was an answer to prayer for very many counties. Kirinyaga, for example, had been talking about it for a very long time, but we never had the resources. So we had kept pushing it forward. Now this government came and made it the priority. So we're only required to put in a certain amount of money. The national government will provide and then give this support of the engagement with the private sector, both locally and internationally, so that to ensure that we have the markets. What are we doing? Apart from setting aside land for the industrial parks, which you have seen advertised and has been mentioned, and apart from ensuring that we have adequate land, not just for what we're building now, but for expansion in the future, all these county governments, and would have been more, Your Excellency, it's just that the notice was a bit short, and yesterday was Madaraka, but we're about 15. I'm trying to trace them. I was trying to see where they're sitting. All the county governments you're seeing here, and many that are, and the rest who are not here, we have all identified our value chains. We haven't just identified our value chains from drawing it from a hat. We have looked at what it is that we've been producing, and that which we really would need to move to the next level in terms of processing and value addition. I will give you an example of Kirinyaga, and it's not one of the value chains that's listed here, but avocado oil, I think, is avocado oil is one of the edible oils. And in Kirinyaga, for example, about 4 years ago, we started giving seedlings to farmers for hash and fuete. which has increased the production of avocado by over 4 times. Now, you will hear a lot of complaints about these avocados because, oh, there's no market, and when there is market, the price is very low. We are being exploited by the people that who've been brokers who've been coming to buy. But now, because of what we are doing with the industrial park, we are going to be expecting that we will have, for example, as an industry, someone aggregating at the industrial park for export, and also a medium-sized or large factory for processing avocado into oil that is used for cosmetics or is used for cooking. And we haven't just said that we are looking. We have been in the process of engaging potential investors. They're already knocking on our doors. When they hear there is an industrial park, people are coming and saying, I can do this. And we've done the same as well for the tomato value chain. Kirinyaga is one of the leading producer. It is the leading producer of tomatoes in the country, 60,000 metric tons, and we can do that twice a year. And a lot of that tomato, over 40% goes to waste, because we haven't been able to store. Until now, we finally see light at the end of the tunnel with the Kipes, because in the Kipes, there will be the cooling facilities, Your Excellency, which you suggested that every industrial park must have to be able to store the tomatoes. So that's just in a nutshell. So working backwards for all the value chains that you have had here, and the governors will be speaking for themselves to tell you what it is that they are doing with respect to the specific crops that we are dealing with. But it's not just about agriculture. There's also the issue of manufacturing, for example, pharmaceutical. That doesn't require the production in agriculture. But I was just having a conversation with His Excellency just now in the holding room, telling him that he may be aware that this country imports saline water. We don't produce our own saline water. We import saline water. So every water that is used in hospital for drips or for eye drops, it's imported. Yet we have rivers. Between me and Governor Sess, we have Nyamindi River, which has the cleanest of. Why don't we have a saline water factory somewhere between Kirinyaga and Embu? That's an example. But this Kipes is a step towards that, and I must thank His Excellency for driving this agenda, and the minister, he really pushes us, and sometimes we complain, but we are getting there. We are getting to ensure that we are working backwards to provide what the farmers require, the seeds and all, and then going all the way down to ensuring that we are providing space for industry and for private sector. And today we'll be looking forward to hearing what it is they have for the counties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Governor. And Carol, I want to come to you to hear from the private sector. We've seen the presentation by Anthony, what the potential is. The private sector is therefore aligned with the entire vision that the president has. But then what is it that you need done so that you can get on ground and start doing these things in all these counties that are prepared? What can the private sector, what does the private sector need today?
Thank you very much. Let me first tell the president, you're not bullying us. We are aligned. And whatever the issues are, these conversations will sort them out. And we'll be able to get to that. And if you remember when during the manifesto discussions, when you met us, we did bring to your attention about one of the value chains, housing, and how exciting it was for us to see the SMEs and the big companies coming together and creating that value chain, and what the transformation of lives of a small Juakali association and their families, of what that had happened. So it's not lost. We're going to work on it, and we will get there. So be assured. And we've worked for many years together. I always remind the president that he's the first minister who ever called me during coalition government on a landline. And so I know his way of working. So I'm excited that we're having this conversation. And as KEPSA, we're able to bring all the sectors together for you, whichever sector. And this is even to the governors, that if you need to meet the sectors, you don't have to keep wondering which association, which subsector can do this. Call us, we will rally them If you need only one sector, then you can call one sector. But if you need the sectors around, we will bring all of them to you. So I needed to first begin by assuring you that, and then to say what you have said in terms of the focus, that we agree with, and as private sector, we are here to support as a partner to government in development, as we've done over the years. So as we are looking into these value chains, I look at some of the challenges that maybe we are facing as a country. And I think sometimes we forget as a country and blame the government, but we forget that there are global challenges. You know, we are all facing inflation as a global, as a world. There's a war, you know, and maybe half the time some of those things are what affects us here, but we don't pick them up and we think it's our own challenges. So part of that is what I just wanted to say. For us as a country, as private sector, is to look at and say, as the world is going through these challenges, what opportunities are coming up? And we saw that with COVID. You know, Kenya was able to rally quickly and come up with solutions. You know, our factories, Just Betty and others, transformed their factories to producing PPEs. You know, we moved quickly and we started saying, what are the supply chain issues that we needed to do? So again, a moment like now has come to make sure that these value chains work. And this is our commitment to you. Let me begin by saying that, and picking from where Governor Igoro has said, and she used the example of tomatoes. You know, Kirinyaga alone, not only is it number one, it can supply all the tomatoes we need, not for only eating, but for paste, which we import as a country, but also anything we need in the value chains of tomatoes, and contribute 2 billion Kenya shillings in revenue in 1 year. You know, and if we did that with each of the governors seated here in terms of your value chains, 2, 3, many of you, the countries you come from, can do about 2 to 3 value chains. You can imagine we will not need to borrow a cent for the infrastructure. From independence, our infrastructure was all extractive. It all faced out to our colonial masters. Now it's about integration. We don't have to borrow anything to do that infrastructure if we only did the value chains. So allow me, Your Excellency, as we have said this and we've said all the positive things, what are some of the pinching areas that are affecting business as we move into these value chains? And so I'll call a few and give them a minute each to just say, if Mr. President, your government did this for this value chain, then what you have asked for, we will. And we will hold them accountable. As I call them, let me say something that your CS challenged me, and you need to help me with your CS. He gives me very high challenges. He said he wants 500,000 jobs from the private sector for internship. And in a week, I think we have managed to secure commitments and pledges of 150,000. But ask him to go a bit slow on us so that we move on this agenda. But we are happy for the challenges. So let me, the governor wants to say something before I call the, okay.
Before sorry, Excellency, before you call the private sector, because I thought we were just doing opening remarks and then going to the different sectors, allow the governors then to first talk about their value chains before then we hear the response from the private sector, because I thought we were still at the opening remarks. If you'll allow me, I will ask Governor Susan to talk about pyrethrum, and then I will ask Governor Wanga to do cotton, and maybe mention something on edible oils. And then after that, Governor Sicily was also to input on edible oils, mostly, I think, from the nuts, macadamia, and also the...
We might need some affirmative action.
Sorry, Your Excellency. For once, Your Excellency, the shoe is on the other foot. I hadn't actually even realized, but they're the ones who volunteered, but you'll be happy to know that we have Governor of Wajir. Ahmed will talk about leather, representing mostly the ASAL counties, though we know that the leather industry is not just from that side. Governor Badilisha also has told me that they used to produce pyrethrum, and there are certain interventions that they would require. So that for the first round, if we can do that. and then Governor Lusaka will also come in after that. So if we may request that you do 1 minute each, and then we can move then back to the private sector. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for this opportunity. And for me, really quickly, pyrethrum is also something that together with Your Excellency, we have been very passionate about. And the reason for that, without going into numbers, because I'm sure you've seen them, and I like to pride myself or pride Nakuru as the home of pyrethrum. You can imagine that a few years ago, my numbers, by the way, were saying 80% globally. They used to get that from Kenya, but I've seen from, I'm sure your numbers are better, it's 90%. And now we are only at 2%. So you can see the level of opportunity that's in there. But also I'm glad to see that in the last couple of years, we've woken up to the reality that we really can do well. From being out there with the farmers, I know initially we sort of as a country perhaps mismanaged a bit the bit about payment to farmers, and that is what made many of the farmers stop doing pyrethrum. And some of them challenged me and they told me, you know, if we plant potatoes and we don't get a market to sell them, I can feed the potatoes to my children. But on the other hand, if I plant pyrethrum and nobody buys the pyrethrum, kind of can't eat it, yeah? So that was sort of the logic, and they moved away from that. But from where we are, Your Excellency, we actually have a very good block of counties. Beginning with myself, we have West Pokot, we have Elgeyo Marakwet, Laikipia, Meru, Nyandarua, Kericho, Bomet, Trans Nzoia, and Uasin Gishu. Oh, Nyamira, I'm sorry, plus Nyamira. So together, we are forming a really good block there, and I want to say it here, and I believe Brian and Dave are in here from Kentegra, who have been very helpful in bringing farmers on board to continue or to agree actually to plant pyrethrum, and we've been out there together on the ground. And from those farmers who have been able to do it, really, Your Excellency, you can see the difference. We went out there, we would measure it, they get some receipts and they pay them within a week or two, and the farmers were telling me you can even use now the bursary money you used to give us to do roads, because with those receipts, the principals in the schools accept their kids, and when they are paid, they pay. So it's a big deal, and it's coming along. We are pushing it. From the CS Moses Kuria here, we've had a lot of discussions, and from our pyrethrum producing counties, all we ask is you join with us as we are doing with the CAIPs, get us some money so that we can get some money for farmers. Myself plus the other governors, what we have done on our part is add money in our budgets for the seedlings, because a big part of the challenges has been that our farmers don't have the seedlings or the good seedlings. I use Kentegra a lot, for example, because I've worked quite a bit with them and I've seen the kind of extension services they are giving to the farmers, which is really critical because they need to sort of understand the best practices. So inadequate funding has also been a big deal, post-harvest losses. Pricing has been poor, but now with quite a bit of players in this market, we are doing well. We are doing quite well, diseases and pests, and the poor infrastructure, which we are working on. But to combat that, we are, like I said, putting in our budgets money to help the farmers, which together, hopefully, the national government will help us a bit, and together we can get this moving. And we have quite a few players as well from the, like I said, the pyrethrum processing company of Kenya, Kentegra, Africam, botanicals, all green and all that. In addition to the seedlings, we are also providing, in partnership with the stakeholders, some of these are partners here, we are providing modern dryers for this pyrethrum for the farmers, which is also going a long way in their being able to get good pricing for their pyrethrum with, I'm finalizing now, I can see you're moving. So we are working very hard on this value chain, and in addition to that, as a county, we are bringing or mobilizing the farmers together so we can form cooperatives for better bargaining power, and as well as pyrethrum growers associations and that sort of stuff. So that is where we are. I wouldn't take much longer than that, but I'm glad our numbers are going up, and I promise you, Your Excellency, that we are going to really run with this and get us back to where we used to be. Thank you.
Governor Wanga. Would you like to come in front, please?
Hello, Gladys.
Thank you, Excellency. Let me thank you for leading all of us to leave NATO, which is not the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but no action, talk only. And so we are very happy that we've now moved with the KIPES. And when this came up in Naivasha, Your Excellency, we said this is what we've been doing. You met us where we were going in terms of getting our industrial parks together. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Now, speaking about cotton and the cotton value chain, I think what we need, as you said correctly, is the correct seeds. In Homa Bay, for example, we've now, using the NARIG money under the World Bank, mobilized farmers in their cooperatives and supported them. But now, we've now registered over 12,000 farmers with about 15,000 acres of land. If you calculate how much seeds we need about 22,500 kilos of seeds. And we had already talked to our farmers about BT cotton. But now it's become very difficult to access the seed. I'm glad that the ministry next week will be coming to Homa Bay with 3,500 kilos of seed. So you can see the gap is still very large. And if you look at the yield, if we had BT cotton, 22,500 tons, we'd be able to produce at least 22,500 tons of cotton at the end of the day and be able to support Rivertex, which only needs 56,000 tons for the year. So the seed question is big. And what we said, Your Excellency, when we met with the minister was, the national government doesn't have to give it all. If we can acquire it, and we have a G2G, so that counties we can also put in, because this is our lifeline as well, so that counties we can also put in money to buy the seeds. But we need to know where to buy the seeds, because you know, if seeds don't grow, it's an impeachment question. Sas can tell you, you know. Isn't it, Sas? You can be impeached if you give seeds that don't grow. So that's a very important question there. So if we can get it from government, we'll know it will be certified seeds that if we give will grow. And of course now following that will be the issue of pesticides and just farmer education going forward. And then there's the issue of ginning. And I think the private sector brought it out. When Homa Bay farmers grow seeds, they are ginned in Salawa, in Baringo. So now, you know, seeing is believing. We know we are faith people. Faith is, you know, believing in things hoped for, but people want to see. If I know this is my ginnery, I will take it there. So I think the issue of ginnery is big. I want to leave that at that. And then speak briefly about edible oils. Your Excellency, I know you've spoken about Busia and we are working there, but do you know that 80% of Kenya's Lake Victoria is in Homa Bay? The other 4 counties share 20%. So when it comes to palm oil, last week, together with the private sector, we were in Uganda. We saw what they've done in terms of growing palm oil. Your Excellency, I haven't slept since I came from Uganda because I'm thinking, where am I going to get the land to put together farmers? Because you can't get 100,000 acres of land or 50,000 that is out there. So it's to talk to farmers and to owners of land to ask them how we can come together in cooperatives and grow the palm oil so that we can move. So that is a very, if you saw what happened, if I saw what I saw in Uganda, surely there is no reason at all why the entire lake basin cannot be growing the palm oil. And same to sunflowers and so on, Your Excellency. And finally, energy must be part of this discussion. The energy ministry must be part of the conversation. Because every investor, now we have industrial parks, every investor is asking, what about power? And there are people, for example, who want to come and invest in solar farms, you know, and so on and so forth. But you know the queue. When I was chair of finance committee, there was a big queue of people looking for PPAs, over 200-300 people. So how do we deal with the issue of power? Thank you, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, you can see why I started with the ladies. My Vice Chair, Governor Wajir, and then we'll go to Governor Cicely. Mudhomi and then Sicily, and then Governor Bungoma.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency, the President, and all protocols observed. Your Excellency, I think the eloquence with which you share your frustration might be what convinces everybody to accept everything you're saying. I was so convinced about this housing thing. I wish the parliamentarians were also here. Your Excellency, I think we also share the same frustration because we've been saying the same thing. My name is Ahmed Abdullahi, Governor of Wajir, Vice Chair of Council. We've been saying the same thing in all our counties. I first started getting into the political space, not contesting but supporting someone in 2002. And every time presidential aspirants came to Wajir, they have talked of exporting meat to the Middle East. So I've told my people, we either do that these 5 years, or we don't talk about it ever. So those are some of the things. Now, with respect to leather, I wish I knew that we could make more money from the skins than from the meat. We've just come out of a drought situation, and we've lost, quite some livestock. We could have lost even more had it not been for the interventions of national and county governments. The boreholes and the borehole coverage that we've had has actually helped reduce the amount of livestock we've lost, but we've still lost a lot of livestock. And they die with the meat and with the skins and everything. So this leather business is something that we want to take very, very seriously. In a number of counties up in the north, because we keep being reminded that we have the third largest herd in Africa, a lot of that herd is sitting in south, in arid and semi-arid counties. And I also saw that the gentleman who was presenting, when he was talking about the hides and skins, he didn't include camel hide. Right? And I'm sure that could be quite useful as well. So there's all these abattoirs that were started in these northern counties that are half complete. Some have the structures complete but not equipped. And a lot of them also have factored in some tannery in them. So probably we need to then have a conversation with Moses and his team to see how best to complete this. And we don't mind giving them to the private sector, actually, because government is not very good in running business. We can agree that you come, and I would want to encourage the private sector to come out into these arid counties so that you're not taking your money only to the usual suspects. The risk versus return, probably there's better return if you take bigger risks. Come out to our counties, see what there is. There's a lot of value chains. Everything that's been said here, including cotton, can also happen up in the north. There are pictures I sent to Your Excellency the other night of farms in Wajir. We have sensitized people about farming so much that now we don't know how to cope with it. We can't deal with the land management issue because everybody is fencing off land to farm. We don't have sufficient storage. Every other day, my CC sends me pictures of onions and millets farms. We just don't know even how to deal with it now. We don't have the cold storage in place. So from one end of the continent of producing nothing, we might go to the other end. We might have the glut that Ukambani had a few years back with green grams. So for this leather, and there's a lot more that can be done. We are, sold to this idea. And we're willing to work with those in the private sector to come and invest in this sector. And there's a lot of hides and skins that people just waste. We use it as sleeping mats. Sometimes we throw it on top of our thatched houses as roofing. So if we can show that there's money, definitely it's something that we're willing to sensitize our people on. and we also will endeavor to complete these abattoirs. My sister has spoken about electricity. It's a challenge in the far-flung areas. Your Excellency, this week, 3 times, my people threatened to ban the KPLC gensets, the diesel generator gensets, because we have had electricity rationing in Wajir town, for the last 5 years. For the last 5 years. And the generator sets that came, I think some weeks back, both of them failed because they're old generators. So electricity is a problem. I went to India some time back, about 2 months back, to a place called Ahmedabad. And by local law, every house must have solar panels on its roof. And they generate electricity, which goes back into the grid. So if what you produce in your house is more than what you consume, you actually make money from the grid. And we're wasting all that sun up in the north. So probably we also need to look at how to force Ketraco to take its transmission lines to Mandera.
Yep.
And together force everyone to have solar panels on their rooftops to generate enough electricity and make it cheaper for these producers. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a brilliant idea on energy, Governor Mudomi.
And as you come in,